Ciao and welcome. We had some beautiful weather last week with temperatures reaching late teens. I was even able to build a pergola in the garden. And when warm weather arrives, all of a sudden I get the urge of cooking something springy. So today I decided to cook a lasagna primavera. Primavera stands for spring, and it is going to be a mixture between a lasagna and a minestrone. Something different and hopefully very delicious. We will see. At the moment I'm preparing the basis of my soffritto, and I've got a couple of cloves of garlic, also some celery, which I'm chopping in relatively small pieces, about 1 centimeter pieces. A couple of carrots which I've washed and keeping the skin, and I'm doing it in about 1/2 centimeter pieces. And lastly, I'm peeling a white onion. You can also use a red onion if you wish, medium size. And like I would do for any minestrone, I'm cutting it into little pieces also. And I'll start with some olive oil in a saucepan. And while it's cold, I'll add the garlic. And as soon as the garlic starts sizzling, I'll add all of my vegetables. I'll turn the temperature down to medium. I'll place the lid on and I'll leave them to cook for a few minutes. Medium-sized courgette, I'll remove the head and the bum. And I'm slicing it in approximately 1 centimeter cubes. Back to my soffritto, I'm adding 1 dessertspoon of tomato puree, and I'll mix it in, followed by 1/3 of a glass of dry white wine. And I'll turn the temperature up and I'll wait until the alcohol from the wine evaporates, which should take less than a minute, which is when I add my sliced courgette, followed by a couple of handful of fresh spinach, or you can also use frozen spinach if you like. And I'll put the lid back on, and the spinach will reduce considerably in size and the vegetables will continue cooking. And while the vegetables are cooking, I'll get some of the other ingredients ready. I'm using a tin of Italian cherry tomatoes, and I'll put them in a bowl first, or a jug. You can use chopped tomatoes if you like, or even passata. I like the Italian cherry tomatoes as they are sweeter, and in this recipe they are perfect, but I'm going to whisk them with my blender first. And that is good. And as you can see, my cherry tomatoes have turned into almost a sauce, which means that you can also use passata if you want. Tin tomatoes are slightly better because they're sweeter. If you want to use passata though, maybe you can add a teaspoon of sugar to sweeten it up a little. This is a tin of black beans. You can use any beans you like. Borlotti beans is also a good choice, or kidney beans, whatever you might have in your cupboard. And I will be using the water, and I've got here the tin from my tomato, so what I'll do, I'll put some in here first. I'll give it a good mix, and I'm gonna add this to my tomato here. If you're to make a normal minestrone, you're likely to use more water than what I just added, but I'm making a lasagna, not just a minestrone. And back to my vegetables, and as predicted, all of the spinaches have reduced, and I'm gonna add the beans first. I'll do a little rinse of this can also, to ensure that I get all of the flavors in there, followed by the rest of my sauce. And I've just added a little amount of water to rinse my jug. And I'll mix everything together. Consistency wise, I'm looking for something not too dissimilar to what a ragu would look like. I think this is pretty good. And this is a good time to add a little salt now, and some pepper also. Quick mix. I'll cover it up for a couple of minutes while I get some of the other vegetables ready. I want to make this lasagna really healthy, and I will be complementing the traditional lasagna sheets here there with some fresh green leaves and also some cabbage leaves, where I will be using them as layers, just like I would do with pasta, so there will be a little bit of a combination. But as my lasagna will be in the oven for just over half an hour, I want to make sure that they are properly cooked, so I will be partly cook them alongside the rest of the ingredients. I've just dealt with the fresh greens, and this is my cabbage. I'll remove the bottom, and I should make the removal of the leaves slightly easier. Here they are. And I think I'll go plenty here. I'm likely to have more than what I need, but of course I can always leave the rest for a minestrone. And the best way to partly cook them, of course, is to use my current minestrone. So I'm adding my cabbage and my fresh greens on top of my minestrone, and that will partly cook them. And I'll place the lid back on, and I'll leave them to cook for a good 10 minutes. And I'm ready to make my cheese or bechamel sauce, and in line with the recipe I want to make this green. So I've got here 4 tablespoons of peas, petit pois peas these are, and these are still frozen, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to add a little water, enough to cover them. I've decided to add a little bit more, so I'll make it 6 tablespoons instead of 4 there. I move to the stove and within no time at all they begin to boil, and I leave them to cook for a good couple of minutes. Whenever I cook minestrone, I always add peas. I noticed that lots of people don't these days. I don't know why, because they're absolutely delicious and they add magnificent flavor. But today, as I've not put them inside with the other vegetables, I will be mushing them with my bechamel sauce, and that'll give me a lovely creamy texture and color as well. And here are my peas. I'm going to strain them first, put them inside a bowl, and I'm moving a little bit of the cooking water, 4 tablespoons with the peas. And I'll keep this water in case I've got any minestrone left after I make the lasagna and I want to dilute it, so I've already got some vegetable waters to add to it. But in the meantime, I'll blend this together. That's it, that's done, and my green peas cream is ready. And I'm ready to make my bechamel sauce, and I'll start by measuring half a liter of milk, and this is cold straight from the fridge. And I can move it into the same saucepan where I cook the peas. Followed by 50 grams of plain flour and half a teaspoon of salt. Nearly forgot the pepper. I'm back on the stove. I'll turn the temperature on maximum and I'll mix everything together to ensure that my flour gets diluted in the milk. And as long as you continue mixing, do not worry about any lumps. The flour will be totally absorbed as the milk is still cold. I've been mixing it for a good minute and I can see that some steam is beginning to come up already, and I'll continue mixing it until it becomes lovely and creamy. It's now beginning to boil, so I'll turn the temperature down slightly and I'll leave it on the hob for a further 20 seconds whilst I'll mix it. Then I'll remove it from the stove and I'll continue mixing it for another 20 seconds. And here it is, in just a few minutes my bechamel sauce is ready. And now that my bechamel sauce is ready, I can add my peas cream. And I'll mix it together and I should get this beautiful light green color. And there it is. And this is going to be one of the toppings of my beautiful lasagna primavera. And of course the first job is to remove all of my fresh green and cabbage leaves, which are almost cooked now. And also they will cool down so that I can handle them safely. And the consistency of my minestrone is perfect. Everything has reduced in size and is not too dissimilar to what you would have consistency wise if you were making a ragu. I've just tested the minestrone for saltiness and it's delicious, but I've added a little pinch more. Always easier to add later than put too much at the beginning. And I'm now ready to put my lasagna primavera together. And like I do with all of my lasagna, I always start with a little bit of a base at the bottom of my oven dish. This will help the bottom part of the pasta to also cook, otherwise there is no liquid underneath. And I'll position some of my pasta. And I'll put some more on my next layer, and as with all my lasagna, I'm a little bit mean with the first layers, and I'll add a little bit more sauce as I progressively go up, as the sauce will filter down as you cook it. A little pinch of pecorino or Parmesan cheese. This is pecorino, you can use either. And just like a normal lasagna, I'm also adding some cheddar. And in my next layer, instead of using pasta, I'm going to be using a combination of my fresh greens, and here is also my cabbage. I'll just put a few leaves to cover the surface and combine them together like so. And before I go ahead and add any more sauce, I'll just compact it down. And here comes my minestrone. I call this sauce to use to make lasagna. Again followed by a little grated Italian cheese and more cheddar. And as I've got plenty of bechamel sauce, I'm going to be applying some in the middle also. And I'll start again and I will repeat the same process until I either reach the top or I run out of pasta. I think it's likely to be when I reach the top today. And I've pretty much reached the top now, and I've managed to do 2 layers with pasta and 2 layers with my cabbage and fresh greens. Although I will have a little minestrone left, not a lot. Look, actually I've done quite well. I need to stop now as I will need to add more cheese and my bechamel sauce, otherwise I left too much, so I'm going to stop now. I had to remove a couple of the spoons of the minestrone as there was too much, and I want to make sure that I got plenty for my bechamel sauce. I'm just using a skewer and piercing a few holes to ensure that everything filters down. But before I go ahead with my bechamel sauce, I put another layer of my Italian cheese. followed by another layer of my extra mature cheddar. And I'm happy that I can add my peas bechamel sauce next. Looks like it might overflow, who knows, we'll see once it cooks. I'm hoping that when the vegetables cook further in the oven, it will shrink. But in any case, I'll put a little tin underneath in case there is a bit of an overspill. It's not the end of the world. But before it goes in the oven, I'm going to make the Italian flag. I've got here some fresh mozzarella which I sliced earlier, and I'll put enough to cover the surface of my lasagna primavera. I'm slicing a fresh tomato, and I will put this on top of my mozzarella so that I can see the 3 different colors. Something like this. And before it goes in the oven, one last sprinkle of pepper. And it is ready to go in the oven. I will cover it with aluminium foil like I do with all of my lasagna. This time I think I'll make a little bit of a dome, otherwise I'll make a mess. And it'll go in the oven for 35 minutes. Temperature of 180 degrees, fan assisted oven. If you've got a normal conventional oven, 200. And the first 20 minutes covered up. The last 15 minutes I will remove the tin foil, and I will give everything a little bit of a caramelized color. So I'll see you in about 45 minutes. Ciao. And we are ready, very, very, very hot, still sizzling. And as predicted, some has...
This tomato has escaped.
Spilled as well. Doesn't matter, that's what washing up is there for. I will leave it for 10 minutes. By the way, I meant to say a couple of things. You do not have to layer with fresh greens and cabbage like I did. If you want to use just lasagna sheets throughout, by all means do that. I've done that to make it a little bit lighter and a little bit more vegetarian, I suppose, as well. But if you put more lasagna sheets, obviously make sure that you put adequate sauce, because that will be absorbing the sauce. The other thing is, you might have noticed that I didn't add any spices or herbs like parsley or basil or oregano. That is because when I make minestrone, I never do. That is the way I was brought up. But lots of people will add oregano or parsley or a combination of all 3, including basil. Entirely up to you. If you were to add any spices, add them at the same time as when you are adding the tomatoes and everything else. Let the garlic and the onion do the job first, and then you can add the spices. So 10 minutes, and I'll see you then. See you later. Well, the smell is very primavera-like and promising. Also, I am going through with a knife and steak knife, and it seems to be going well. I suspect it's going to be more liquidy than a normal lasagna because I didn't put too much pasta, but nevertheless, it will taste wonderful, I'm sure.
Maybe we need a bowl. It's certainly an interesting colour, my love.
It is, yes. It's on purpose. And I'm dividing this into 4 portions, and again it seems to be fairly easy and straightforward to do.
Right, good luck.
I detect a little sarcasm there.
No.
No, of course not. Let's have a look. I'm going to be using a couple of spatulas, as I always do with my lasagna. And very, very gently I'll go underneath. And I'm using this one on my right hand to support the bottom, and the one on my left hand to ensure that it doesn't go everywhere. It seems to work. Good. Gently moving here. Yeah, actually, I'm very pleased the way it has the shape.
Yeah, it's nice and firm, actually, yeah.
I'll try some. Oh my God, it's wonderful. It's absolutely buonissima. Genuinely, it's beautiful. I don't think you need to add any spices. Try and see how you get on, and let me know. Arrivederci, buon appetito e grazie. Thank you. Bye.